Hello, and welcome to On the Payroll, my podcast about leadership, Salesforce, consulting, project delivery, and project management. And more importantly, today's topic, we talk about mental health in this industry. My guest today is Charlotte Buton, and interestingly, we met on LinkedIn. She is currently working in alliances, as she says, in Capgemini. But before this, we met on LinkedIn, and it was because of the fact that she'd been very well traveled and she'd actually studied and lived in China that piqued my interest. We talk about mental health and specifically how the pandemic has affected a lot of people and the kind of things that people are worried about talking about, and why that's so important nowadays to make sure that we look after the mental health of everyone, not just those who are truly suffering because the pandemic has hit them in a really big way, for example, taking away their livelihood, but those who are getting by are still struggling. So in this episode, we talk about why it is so important to talk about mental health. I really hope that you enjoy this topic and enjoy the conversation that I had with Charlotte as much as we did in making it. Thank you. Hi, Charlotte. Welcome to my podcast On the Payroll. Thank you so much for making time to talk to me today. But I'd like to know, how are you feeling? How are you feeling today?
Today I'm feeling great, actually. Yesterday it was the first time I was going back to the office at Capgemini this year, so it was so exciting. So it was an alliances meetup as well, because we could, like many, we couldn't have the Christmas party, in December. It was cancelled. So it was kind of like a Christmas party postponed, but just to meet, have a nice dinner. So it's just good to have the occasion to go back to the office now.
Oh, fantastic. I would like to start the conversation, as I always do, by asking you to just tell us a story about yourself. Tell us about the journey that you've been through, and how you got to where you are today and the kind of learnings that you've had along the way.
It has been quite a roller coaster. So obviously I could have started the journey like when I joined the Salesforce ecosystem as a SDR a few years ago. But I think that the most important is I was working as an SDR for quite a few years, and I really fought hard to get to becoming an alliances manager, because I knew that in one of my company, there was a lack, of an alliances manager to build a relationship with digital agencies who would actually recommend the products to their companies on their behalf, because they had this trusted relationship with their clients. And because I was doing a very good job as an SDR, they gave me the chance to actually become this alliances person. So not with the title of manager yet, but to join the alliances partnership team to be able to do so. And I was smashing targets. I was so happy. It was working. My boss was very happy. Great success in just 4 months. But then the pandemic hit. And suddenly everything I built just fell apart because I was made redundant. Because unfortunately for me, my CEO didn't believe in the power of alliances. He actually wanted everything to be done internally. So he wanted the sales team to sell directly the product so he could have control over the sales pitch instead of relying on partners to be able to do so. So I had the option between going back to my SDR position that I started to hate towards the end because I was ready for the next step, or accept the redundancy package and try to get a new role. As you can imagine, during a pandemic and when you just jumped into the new alliance role, there was not many opportunities, or they needed someone with more experience. But I got very lucky because after 3 months, the company VRP Consulting gave me the opportunity to become an alliances manager to handle the relationship with the ISV partners. They believed in me. They thought that my skills in talking with people and building relationship would be a breath of fresh air to actually really work closely with them. But at the same time, I ended up facing the imposter syndrome for quite a few months because I'm I was made redundant, so my confidence and self-esteem was so low. I talked to you about this, right? And I was glad to hear that a lot of people were feeling the same way as I did. But yeah, the imposter syndrome was bad. I was not asking the right support to my company. Things improved for a time, and they were all fantastic. When we met face to face, when things reopened, I had fantastic people working with me. But then I realized after years that the company was not the right fit for me, because I was alone in the alliances team. They trusted me entirely, but it was still new for me, and I needed someone to report to directly, like an alliances director, to give me guidance, coaching, and all. Plus, I wanted the hybrid working scheme, because I would have had to keep working from home because they didn't have an office in London. And that's where I got very lucky, because the Salesforce ecosystem recruits heavily. And when I actually decided I would change of job, there was so many offers for alliances manager to handle the relationship with Salesforce. I had several interviews, and then I just when I got the offer from Capgemini, I knew this was the place I wanted to go to, because the two people I would report to were just fantastic. They had a lot of experience. They made me feel comfortable, and obviously I had the hybrid working possibility. And now it's been, I think, 4 months since I've been in the company, and I have no regret to have made that choice. And I think that I've been a long way since my beginning in alliances to being exactly where I should be and where I want to be.
Fantastic. So I'm just going to pull you back slightly, because I'm in delivery. I've always been in delivery of projects, and sales is not, I step in during the pre-sales role and things like that. For the audience that's, who might be listening, so just define what SDR is when you say SDR.
Yeah, you're right. I actually have a tendency, to just say SDR, because I worked for so many years as one that, for me, it's an obvious term. So SDR means sales development representative. So I am the person who was doing the cold calls to actually get meeting books for the sales team. So the idea is I had an industry I was working on. So at the time it was travel, hospitality, and automotive. So thank God I was working on it before the pandemic, because I'm pretty sure that if I had travel and hospitality at this time, I would have been in big trouble. But no, at the time I was lucky. It was an industry blooming in need of the product. So my role was to find out a contact at a high position who would be interested in discussing the solution. So I would do a bit of qualification to understand the technologies they were using at the moment, the issues they were facing related to the product we were selling, and then obviously arrange a phone call with my account executive, so she would get into the detail of what the solution could do, how it could solve it, and at a later stage, a demo to really show the capabilities.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. Now, it sounds like this is something that you've been doing for quite a while. And then is being in alliance, is that something that you've always wanted to do?
I didn't actually know what I wanted to do. The reality is you know me a bit and you know my profile. I actually did international business as studies, and then I decided to specialize in fashion marketing for my master degree. But as you can imagine, between fashion marketing and technology, there is quite a huge gap there. But it's just that in London, the fact I was not an English native speaker was very hard to get jobs in fashion marketing, especially if you don't have the contacts. And then the few offers I found in the public relation, I was interested in public relation at the time, the salary was just rubbish. We're talking below 20K in London. So it was absolutely ridiculous. So at the time I was working as a sales assistant in Massimo Dutti, and it was just literally to pay the bills, the time I find something. Until one day the agency Venatrix contacted me and asked me if I would be interested to jump in the technology industry. At the time, obviously, I was a bit desperate, none of the things I was planning with my life were working. So I ended up doing this assessment day where they want to define your profile, how you're able to build relationship, your sales pitch attitude, And I was hired by CloudSense as an SDR to deal mainly with the French market, but also country in South Europe and all. And that's how I actually got my first experience in the Salesforce ecosystem. I did this a year, but it didn't quite work out because of the language barrier, because I was the only person speaking French, and German. And then no one in the sales team would speak a second language. So every relationship I would build with the French market couldn't really have the proper follow-ups as they should have. So I decided to give myself a chance and to live somewhere else. So I ended up then in Decibel, and I worked there for a while as SDR, promoted to senior because I was smashing target and getting some of the biggest deal closing. But while I was doing those big deals, what I realized was I am more of a relationship builder person, so I was like, direct sales is not for me because I don't have this kind of shark attitude, if you know what I mean. I know that not every salesperson is like this, but for me, I was more into the idea of building relationships and having to do the sales. We just had one person at the time who was handling partnership, and then we had someone else joining. But I could still see that this partnership relationship were with our technology partners like Adobe and so on. But no one was actually handling agencies, despite the fact we had conversation with accounts where it was the agency actually using the solution on the behalf of the clients. So I'm like, there is clearly a need there. And there is a huge market for all the possible countries where we are selling the product. So I'm like, I want to join the partnership team because there is an opportunity, there is a role open, and I can start it from scratch, which I did for 4 months. Over 4 months. 4 months, officially when I was promoted. I started to do this a few months before because I was given the chance to kind of test the theory. And we ended up having, through a French agency, the biggest deal of all closing with a massive account. So that was the proof I needed to validate my role.
Amazing. So that's so talk me through. So you were Decibel, you were VRP. Talk me through your current role at Capgemini. What is it you do?
So this time, while I was at VRP Consulting, I was handling the relationship with the ISV partners. So for people who don't really understand what it is, so it's like the Salesforce ecosystem is huge, So as you know, you've got like a Salesforce with all the cloud products, but then you got like ISV partner, which are company having a product that can be, which is part of this ecosystem. So usually they have very easy integration and they can fill some gaps, that can be like as well as document generation, as it can be like the phone calls, it can be data recovery, the possibilities are huge. I can't remember how many apps how many solutions you've got on the App Exchange, but you have a whole marketplace there. But then when I started at Capgemini, my role moved from ISV partner relationship to managing the relationship directly with Salesforce and MuleSoft, which is an integration solution, API management that Salesforce acquired a few years ago. So that's the big difference, is that now I am building the relationship directly with Salesforce. I got a counterpart and we're working together to be able to identify opportunities, new accounts where we would try to sell some of the clouds. And at the same time, we want obviously to do the implementation and have all the services around. So my role is I am kind of this glue, between all the different teams to be sure that our account executives, are aware if the partner is having a discussion, we have a presence within this account. Let's have the conversation together to actually have a pitch together, share a value proposition, and make sure, that everyone is happy, Salesforce is getting licenses sold and we're getting services revenue.
It sounds like it's your dream job. It hits all your strong points.
It is a dream job if you are someone who likes relationship with people, because obviously everyone kind of has their own agenda and we don't always care about the same thing. As I say, Salesforce would care, about the licenses being sold and the ACV number, while we care about the services revenue. So it's all about in alliances, about talking about this is what you're getting if you're doing it. You have to speak the language of each team, which is different, and making sure that they are happy and enthusiastic to do this. So it's all about convincing people, that if they're doing this, they're not doing me a favor. I'm actually doing them a favor for taking this call with a partner, and for the partner, to to go to us, like if they want to discuss an opportunity. So it's not for everyone, but for me, it was definitely the right choice because becoming an account executive was not for me. I'm too nice.
You're saying that all A's are not nice then?
No, they all have their different approach. Some people, I just think that like being focused so much on the numbers and not just like, I mean, I have targets, don't get me wrong. I have numbers I need to achieve, contributing. But my role in alliances is so much more focused on like the relationship building. And I can tell you that like, if the relationship is good, the number will increase. But like, if you're just focusing on the numbers, you can make a transaction, but then that's why, like all the businesses need customer success to be sure that then you don't forget the relationship elements. I know that not all the AEs are the same, but I think that a lot are very target driven and they sometimes forget the human on the other side. And especially in this pandemic world where a lot of calls are happening, instead of having face-to-face meeting in an office, I guess it's so easy to kind of forget that on the other side of the screen, there is someone who has been through this pandemic, might have some mental health issue. And even if they need to do a job, it doesn't cost them anything to just ask, how are you doing today? Like in the middle of a business conversation.
Thank you for that. That segues quite nicely into the topic I want to talk to you, which is about how have you been coping during the pandemic? You started a job and that thing, wasn't a great fit. How did you manage to cope in yourself in terms of just getting through it all?
I'm gonna be honest. It was very poor. I handled this extremely poorly. My partner would say differently. Say actually that like I did very well, but I honestly don't trust him. I'm gonna be honest. When I found out that like my role was being cut, I couldn't believe it. Because like I was smashing targets, I was doing the numbers, my plan was working, and suddenly I was told that like they were not interested, but they wanted to downgrade me. So I was in shock. It's like at this time I already lost my freedom. Like I am someone who like I love discovering all the new places in London. Like restaurants. I love going to exhibition, cultural events. I travel a lot, so I already had kind of my freedom being taken away. Like for everyone else, obviously I'm not the only person. But then I had my job that I fought so hard to get taken away from me. And I swear that I was convinced that like my partner, my relationship with him was still recent at the time. I'm like, he's going to leave. That's it. At this stage, I'm losing everything. So why not my love life? I was spending days crying in bed. And I'm not this kind of person. I'm a very emotional person who can go, from losing to then sometimes losing my temper and all that. I'm French as well, so I guess this is a reason why. But I never imagined that I would be this person having difficulties to get up in the morning. Like I didn't want to put makeup on. I barely wanted to dress up in the morning because why? Like I don't have to go out. I'm not talking to anyone. I'm not even working now. So I wanted to look for jobs, but it's like there was nothing available or nothing that was matching my criteria. So it took me, I think, 2 months to actually then get a grip. I think that's when, at the time, I think it's like you were allowed to leave again. So, and the shop started to reopen. So London was still a ghost town, but I started going out a bit again and I started to have this conversation with VRP. So I'm like, oh, there is hope. Yeah. And I ended up getting the role. So I was very happy, but then as I say, I faced the imposter syndrome for months, thinking that like they hired me at the manager level and they're giving me so much independence, but I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. That's always how I felt. I was having great conversation, everyone seemed to be happy, and it was like I had the constant need of people telling me I was doing a good job. And at the same time, I didn't want to ask for feedback because I was afraid they would tell me that I was not doing a good job, and I was afraid to ask for training, coaching, everything, just because I didn't want to admit that I was at a bad place, which was stupid because like they were there for me. They were happy to help if I needed, but it was psychological. I couldn't get myself to ask for the help. That's why I ended up registering for the Salesforce Women's Network at the time. I needed to be able to talk to people who would understand what I was facing, who were also women who could have had the struggle during the pandemic, being made redundant or having to actually quit their job so they could watch over their kids, this kind of situation. And it helped a lot. Just knowing that there were some other women out there who were facing mental health issue and the imposter syndrome. Not saying that like it's a good thing, but it's made me, I felt less lonely, and it helped a lot.
Thank you for sharing. That's quite a vulnerable share, so I do appreciate you telling your story. If you were to go back and just be able to give yourself advice on how to approach the whole situation, what would you have said to yourself?
You know what? I don't think I would actually change a thing, because it's very easy to say, yeah, I would tell myself, things will get better and so on. But it's like I was telling this to myself already at the time. I think sometimes it's still healthy to go through this moment of vulnerability and to cry, to get the emotions, to be as they are. I remember that at the time I was so annoyed and really pissed off, to have all the posts about like, you have to see the positive side. You're not having COVID and being on an hospital bed, like you don't have money issue, no matter what, you lost your job, but you don't have those financial struggles. But I'm like, I don't want to focus on the bright side. Right now, I feel like shit. And I have the right to feel like shit. Sorry to say this like this, but I hated seeing this post. And I even read articles actually about this constant need of positivity. And I am an optimistic person. I always have been. But this time I felt I don't want to be, because I have the right to feel upset. This is how I feel. And knowing that like I am not in the worst situation compared to others doesn't change how I feel. So I think that like it was the important thing is like, these were my emotions. I had to accept them. And then I had to do my own journey to actually like get back on track, look for jobs, then facing my imposter syndrome. I still managed to get myself registered to this group. And at the end of the day, like the experience at VRP didn't work. But again, I think that I learned from this experience to take to Capgemini, that like sometimes you can't make things work. It's like I was trying hard. I could have probably done more, but even the company, like the HR department, like, do you think we could have done things differently? But the reality is like, if they did, I would have probably stayed longer and still at the end of the day realize that I still want someone, a direct boss, like who I can report to, who I can ask help directly if I need to, would be available for me. And the hybrid working, because even if I'm getting used to working from home and it's not that bad, I'm actually really getting used to it now that I am so busy with my role. But it is nice to have the option to go to the office and see the team and so on. So I don't think I would change anything, because I think I got better through it. Not saying I want to ever face this again, but I think that like the experience taught me a lot about accepting the negative emotions and turn them into something good at the end.
That's amazing. I think a lot of people would have gone down the toxic positivity route, as you pointed out, because have some perspective, as you say, you've got a house, etc. You're not suffering quite as much, but it doesn't change the fact that you are still suffering in your own way. So and the fact that you've said that this was a journey you had to take anyway, and that you wouldn't change anything, thank you. That was very, very brave to share.
I'm glad you like it.
As a volunteer with Samaritans, I think that a lot of people feel they're desperate, and sometimes where there's only one option to all their solutions is because everyone is telling them or invalidating what they're feeling. Oh, you've lost your job, don't worry, you still have a house. you can't get through university, that's okay. You still have a family that loves you. Or the person broke up with you, there's still other fish in the sea. It does not help that person. And a lot of times we get callers who feel that they can't talk to other people because they feel invalidated. Yes, I know I'm luckier than everyone else, but it does not help me where I am today. So for you to share your experience, that's really quite powerful, I think, for a lot of people who will listen to this. And the news feed that we get through LinkedIn and all the other social media, it's so steeped in positivity, and it helps some people, but for a lot of people it doesn't change the fact that their reality still hurts in the unique way that they are and how they perceive the things that happen to them. So I'm very grateful that you shared that story, because it is such an important message to share. I am actually really and you know this already, because we connected on LinkedIn, and I was so curious. You went to China to do your degree at Beijing University, and that just blows my mind as a Chinese diaspora. So I'm third generation Chinese immigrant from Malaysia, so not from China directly. And for my generation to view the motherland and things like it's very, very different. And one of my dreams for a long time was to actually live and work in China, but that opportunity never arose. So tell me about what made you think, I'm going to go to the other side of the planet and do this degree, and just tell me a bit about that.
So actually, when I picked my international business degree, when I selected the school, it was really because you had the possibility of spending 2 years abroad at least. I ended up spending 3 because I failed tragically the TOEFL 3 times, which is the English language test that was required at the time to get into one of the partner university during the 3rd year. So yeah, it's very funny knowing that now it's been 7 years I've been living in London, I'm bilingual and got my British citizenship. So the proofs are like, those tests are rubbish. But it was a requirement at the time. And I didn't want to do the typical path that most people would do. A lot say that they wanted to do international business, but they would still want to be close to home, to have the possibility of going back frequently to see their family and friends. So a lot would go like to England, Spain, Germany, or things like this. Or obviously a lot of people would want to try to get to the States, but that needed an even better English level, Me, I wanted to go to China because since I was a child, my dad talked about his trip. He was a big traveler as well. I probably get that from him. And he went to China, I think it was during the 80s. And from the video he showed me, it seemed to be like a complete different world, because everyone was on bicycle. Everyone had like the white shirts, like with the Mao collar. And there was barely anything in terms of the building. It looks like you were actually like on the first half of the 20th century, not the second half, but like it was quite impressive. And I was so curious. I always loved learning about the Chinese culture. Like I wanted to try real Chinese food and not what was called Chinese food in France. It sounds silly, but I was fascinated by the culture. So for me, it's like, I think that if I want to make this experience worth it, I will do the internships, in countries like in Europe to be able to get the proper work experience. But I want to try something different from the partner university and learn about Chinese culture, a bit of Mandarin, Chinese economy, understand how to do business with China, because I thought this is also the future. I can benefit from the cultural experience, but I can also benefit from the business experience to understand what are our cultural differences and how can we work together.
So you mentioned earlier on that you could speak French and German. Can you speak Mandarin? And what proficiency?
Oh, please don't ask me to speak Mandarin on this call, because like it is such a hard language. Let's be honest, if I wanted to learn it properly, I should have gone to the University of Xi'an, because they had every morning, the full morning was dedicated to Chinese listening, Chinese writing, Chinese speaking. we just had a few lessons and our teachers couldn't speak proper English, so that was making the learning experience so hard. And something I definitely learned is like, you can know the vocabulary, but if you're not saying with the right tone, they just won't understand anything. So that's definitely didn't help. It's definitely, I'm very good at learning languages, but Mandarin was not in the cards. But there is one expression I would advise everyone to know if they go to China. It's taigwille, or it's too expensive. I probably say that wrong now because it's been years since I used it. But trust me, if you go to China, if you want to buy anything, you always have to bargain. So if you know this expression, they will decrease the price.
What a great tip. Thank you very, very much for that. So just looking at your LinkedIn profile, so you went to Beijing and then you moved on to Coventry University to do international fashion marketing. How did you, tell me about that decision making? Is fashion something that you are really passionate about?
You know what? It's a very funny question because people won't believe me based on how I'm so outgoing and the fact I'm in alliances. A decade ago, I used to be an introvert person. I had a very low self-esteem and confidence. It was just terrible. I would be afraid to go out. I would have some hyperventilation crisis, where suddenly it's almost like, you need a plastic bag to blow in, because I was afraid to go out. I was afraid of being judged. I was not paying much attention to my appearance. And then when I was actually I told you I failed my TOEFL test. So I ended up spending a year in England, in London, to do an au pair experience. So, when you take care of children living with a family, because I just wanted to do something completely different and I thought it'd be a good experience. And I just suddenly started to change, I started reading fashion magazines that my friend left the time that she found an apartment in London. So I had a massive pile of magazines that she left with me because she was keeping all of them. And I started to go through them. I dyed my hair in blonde because I needed change. I started to put makeup on and I started to try to find my style. And suddenly my vision of fashion changed. I always saw that as a reason for girls to bully me, because they were supposed to be the fashionable girls and trendy. So for me, fashion had a bad connotation. For me, anyone who liked fashion was superficial, and bitchy. That was my point of view. And then I realized that if you step away from those girls and you actually take fashion for what it is, it can be a way to self-express yourself. It can be a way to show your individuality, what you like, how you want to present yourself, because appearance is very important no matter the kind of appearance you're showing. It can connect you with people who share the same values and so on. So actually, I decided I wanted to do an international fashion degree and to move to do it in London, because London is a place for the subcultures. A lot of subcultures happen in the 20th century with the mods with the mini skirt and the kind of bob, like the Beatles style, or then the punk style, the goth style. And I was fascinated at the idea of learning about all these independent designers who wanted to show their individuality. So it didn't work, obviously, but I still have no regret to have learned this, because London is such a great place, such a fantastic melting pot, to have all those cultures and fashion influence from all the different countries. And I love being part of the London culture,
So you mentioned something really interesting, which was introvert. You were an introvert before. Do you think that was more due to the fact that you were having challenges learning English, or is that a natural part of your nature?
It is very funny, because we had this conversation with my partner yesterday. He said that I was probably never an introvert. It's just the things I've been facing in my life with a lot of bullying and so on that actually made me to have a low self-esteem and confidence. So I just needed the experience to be able to get my personality out there, because I was always talkative within my family. That was always there, but it's just that I was afraid of my own shadow. I was afraid that every time I would open my mouth to say something, I would be bullied on it, because any reason were good, for people. And then when I started traveling, I was doing it by myself without knowing anyone, while a lot of people at uni were going as a group of friends. They were trying to find the internships, and agree on the cities they would go. I just went by myself in Germany, then I went by myself doing the au pair job. I didn't know anyone when I went to China because suddenly I was with a different promotion, but it didn't matter. And same for Montreal. I always did it by myself. Before I meet my partner, I was traveling by myself. And I think that actually, sometimes being with yourself is a good occasion to meet new people, learn from these new people. They don't know you, they don't have to judge you, and you can actually find your own voice, and what you want to do with your life without having the pressure of people where actually I should have never have been listening to them at the first place, because now I'm so happy and proud of the person I became, the job I've got and my life. And sometimes I look back at the path that some of those people took, and I'm like, clearly, I didn't have any any reason to listen to these people. They didn't carry the truth with them. So I think it's a great advice to give to people is even if at the time, it might feel difficult and you just wonder what is wrong with you. Sometimes you will realize that actually what was wrong with them. Oh, you're on mute, Pay. Typical
Sorry.
from the Zoom calls.
Indeed. Thank you for that. That was really quite useful to know in terms of when something is wrong, it's not, how was it? Okay, we're going to talk about silly motivation. It was about, it's not you, but it's the environment that's causing you to grow in a very specific way. I like the fact, so we first met at that networking call, and then we connected after that. I'm really liking what I see now, because it sounds like you've actually found your groove. You seem to be in such a great place, and it kind of comes out. So talk to me about what are the things that drives you, what are the things that fills your soul with joy?
Really, the connection with people is so important, which is funny because I know I say that before. I used to not really have friends or anything like this, and then I was avoiding people because I was afraid of them, and I traveled by myself. But I actually love meeting with people, especially new ones, I think our differences are so important to learn, I love being in London and going out. So for me, what's driving me is definitely the relationship part, which is why I love being an alliances manager so much. It's I'm meeting all the time at work, great people. So at Cap, at Salesforce, and MuleSoft, and now it's fantastic to be able to meet with them face to face, for a nice lunch or drink, so relationship with people is definitely what's driving me. And I guess that the other thing would be new experiences. I still want now to go back to trying new restaurants of different type of food on a monthly basis. This is what we agreed with my partner for this year. It's now that we are double jab plus boosted, it's nothing can stop us. So at least once a month, we have a date night trying new food. In January, we did Russian food, which we never tried before. We did a tapas restaurant on Saturday. Let's see what is going to be next month. But back to the new experiences with, again, cultural events, exhibitions, traveling, I don't know what our next destination is going to be because we still need to get back to it. It's been 2 years since we did so much planning. So it's not about having a lack of spontaneity and planning everything, but it's I want to make the most of this life. And I think I was already doing it before the pandemic and didn't need a wake-up call, when it happened, to make the most of it. So now I just want to get back to it, and we started this year. It took some time, but I think we're finally on the right path, to get back to enjoying the life as it is.
So cool. Thank you. I just wanted to thank you once again for the time that you spent to talk to me, and it's so great to see. I'm just reflecting back to when we first spoke. I think it was about a year and a half ago. I can't remember now. And to see you clearly enjoying your life and your work, and thank you for sharing your lessons on this call. I appreciate it.
I really appreciate Paige. I like you inviting me to do this. Like for people who might be listening or watching this, it's like I never did this before. I speak a lot during like a conversation online with others, but I never did something that was recorded. So please, like if my thoughts were all over the place, like I apologize for this, but I really hope that my personal experience will inspire people, you know, to be less cruel over themselves. Because I think this was a thing is like, I was beating myself up because I hated what I was seeing, you know, like in the mirror. But sometimes I think it's important to remember to be a bit more gentle with yourself. I think this is the best advice if you had to take one thing out of this call.
Absolutely. I think everyone is talking about being kind to others, and we forget that it's really important to also do it for yourself. So on that note, thank you again, Charlotte. 谢谢.
Thank you very much. Au revoir.